The large-scale research shows women actually outperform men as investors for one reason. Women tend to lack confidence compared to men, so they just do less.
If you sort of absorb yourself in property, and depending what you do for a living or how involved you are as an investor, you got to sort of maintain perspective of it all, because you can become really conditioned to think that, you know, everyone walking around has $100 million property portfolios. It's still a fraction of the Australian population who are playing in that game.
There's a massive industry out there telling you to buy, the 20, 30 houses. Generally, they're younger people. Like, it's almost like collecting toys, the analogy we often used. But like Margie mentioned, you're going to build this portfolio full of debt. It's just a pile of debt.
I say this proudly, we've ruined the market. It's no longer possible, I don't think, to buy well without a buyer's agent.
Okay, everyone, how you going? Phil Tarrant. Welcome to Inside Commercial Property with Rethink Investing. Joining the studio by Scott O'Neill, episode 70. And I sort of just had a small amount of fatigue before we come on air, thinking how long we've been doing this. And I'm still learning. It's a great privilege to be able to spend an hour or so with Scott every single week, every single month to record the podcast and get the opportunity to pick his brain. And my job is to ensure that you're better informed in relation to your strategy development, how you're investing in commercial property. So hopefully the questions that I ask Scott can help extract good information from him for you to make those better informed decisions. We bring guests into the podcast, which we have this month. I'll introduce her shortly, but before we get going, Scott's interest rates went up.
Yeah, they did.
Who would have thought?
3.6 to 3.85. It's not a big difference against the grain of last year. The theme was more drops, but I don't know, weirdly, I kind of like this direction because it's counter-cyclical to the whole residential investment story. Like, we all know cash flow is so squeezed in that space already. So every little increment when you got these high debt, low yielding residential portfolios is it does hurt you. And we actually find in the commercial world, we do benefit from this. Like, we're talking to investors anywhere from like 1 million to 30 mil. A lot of them are using large amounts of cash. They've got good positions and they're really into the whole replacement income strategy. So when the cash flow or cost of debt goes up, you're more inclined to seek high yielding investments. So it makes residential look less attractive and commercial more attractive. So we've seen it on the coalface. I guess our leads week to week have increased about 30, 40%. And that should continue. I think there's multiple factors. It's obviously not just interest rates. Yeah, there's just a strong demand and it outstrips the amount of properties around. So there's wait periods. There's not that many sellers selling. Maybe the interest rates might actually make the odd person sell as well. So it could be good for stock in the long run. But yeah, long story short, anyone that's kind of sensitive to a 0.05% interest rate rise is probably investing the wrong way.
That's my counsel to people. I say, if this changes anything, you probably shouldn't be investing in property. So take it easy, stay the course, don't panic. I'd be expecting, and I'm factoring in at least another couple of interest rate rises in my maths when I'm assessing opportunities, and that's just
and if you're buying,
sensible. That's
perfect. Like you'd want multiple rate rises. Because if you're buying,
I'd rather not have it. However, but it changes market conditions though to your advantage.
But I'd argue you'd want it because if you're personally looking to buy, it's just going to make it a little bit easier to buy because it'll push the odd seller to sell who was on the fence. Because I remember last year, we're dealing with hundreds of properties a month, and a lot of it, like the owners just not selling, is our greatest blockage to a deal. It's not other buyers. It's really just they know they just hold on for a little bit longer and they're going to get more money. So maybe it's kind of capped it for a bit. So there's an opportunity to buy a little bit more competitively. And, whatever happens long-term with interest rates, no one knows. But you can buy into an asset a little bit better than you could last year.
You heard it here first. And I'd sort of echo Scott's sentiments. Absolutely. Good time to buy. And before we introduce our guest, Scott, the other sort of big elephant in the room is all this noise around reducing the discount on capital gains tax. And everyone's sort of giving commentary around that with reference to residential property, but it also applies to commercial property.
Yeah.
How will that change or shape things, do you think?
Again, similar sentiment to interest rates. You might think this is crazy, but it's probably going to be good for commercial because commercial is a long-term asset hold. It's high cash flow. The only way to really make money in residential is to sell or refinance against it and pull your money out. So anything to do with the tax increasing when you sell is just going to make your after-tax return just a little bit poorer. Commercial, I'm thinking with my portfolio, I never will sell 90% of the commercials I own. I'll sell a couple of the little ones, but the big trophy assets, they're for the next generation. So capital gains is irrelevant. But anything residential, it's just a ticking time bomb. When do I sell it? Is this the year? Because like the houses get older, the yield, it's never going to be good enough for, money in the bank or any other high yielding like interest rate type stuff. So I think it's going to be a pretty empty threat for commercial. If anything, it makes the asset class comparably more attractive.
What I'd probably say also to that is most commercial investors would probably hold those assets in company structures to some degree or some other vehicle which probably isn't their personal names. So they're all prepared and built for sort of taxation effectiveness and efficiencies purely through the vehicles which they hold them in. You must say that. Do you ever see many people buying commercial in their personal names, only through structures?
No, like once you start looking over deals, you call it over 3 mil, you generally, a discretionary trust companies every now and then, but personal names, not so much. Super is the other big one. I'm seeing a lot of people buying in their super at the moment. There's a bit of a gold rush there at the moment for... obviously, it's the yield play again. Maybe it's the age of our average client is getting to that point where, like, our average client's probably around 45 to 50. So, 15 years off retirement, time to buy. So supers are, becomes more relevant.
And the capital gains inside of super, will they have effect as well under this sort of new regime?
I haven't seen how the latest rulings affected it, but again, the tax rate in that's so low, it's
different.
Going to be less of an effect.
Yeah, so make sure you're speaking to the right professionals when you're making these decisions. No doubt your accountant probably should be involved in these conversations when you think about where and how and where to hold certain assets. But I guess today, all the way from Queensland, Margie Baldock, Senior Buyers Advocate at Rethink Group. We've never met before, have we?
No, Phil, but I'm glad we're meeting today.
Yeah, you've got a sense of familiarity around it.
I've watched and heard all your podcasts, so I feel I know you, but we don't have the
Who's the better podcaster, me or Scott?
Oh, come on. He's my boss, so I've got to say that, right? So
You're probably going out for lunch after this and you've got to do all that sort of stuff.
But we're always too busy wheeling and dealing, Scotty and I.
So do you ever not talk about property, you two?
Well, Scotty and I are like complete opposites.
You're allowed to call him Scotty, by the way.
Oh, well, he's awesome, so I can't help it.
Okay, there you go.
But I think we're so opposite. But the one thing where we are totally united is obsession with the deal. Very common property addiction, and I'm really pleased about that and proud of it.
It can probably become an addiction, a positive addiction, is it? Yeah.
Maybe. Mostly positive.
Mostly positive.
Yeah, look,
sometimes negative.
Nothing is ever one thing without the other.
When do they know, say it's gambling or drinking and stuff, like when they go, there's a hotline saying there's maybe too much. When do you know that property is a negative addiction?
It's a legit thing.
Yeah.
It's funny. I actually do ask clients when's enough's enough, and I've actually done this to poor Scotty because I do feel it actually can be so addictive that you do lose sight of when enough is enough. So it's actually a really, really good question. And I would encourage everyone listening to this to actually ask themselves, what is your enough? Because it will drive the decisions you make. And so it's really important to know that.
Yeah, it's a really good point. And if you sort of absorb yourself in property, and depending what you do for a living or how involved you are as an investor, you got to sort of maintain perspective of it all, because you can become really conditioned to think that, everyone walking around has, $100 million property portfolios and everyone's buying these big commercial assets. It's still a fraction of the Australian population who are playing in that game. So many of those guys and girls buying direct property, or they just absorb,
Absolutely.
Yeah, often, because a lot of these guys and girls are literally just buying, the 100 mil towers, and like even the big companies, they might do 5 deals a year. Like we're doing 65, 70 deals a month. So, that gives us access to a segment of the market they never see. And when they're always kind of owning 1% of a deal or 5% of a deal, they start liking the idea, I want to own my whole thing. Sometimes when you're so close to the coalface, like it's like a commercial sales agent. How many of you met that own commercial property?
Surprisingly few.
Very few. It's like they don't get onto their own stuff.
And you can tell because they're not addicted. Like if you were onto it, you would be addicted, right? So I can tell the difference from that. If you really are investing in this and you're doing well, even when you're not doing well, you still love it because it's that wheeling and dealing. And when you don't do well, it's probably because you did something stupid. So you're getting that opportunity to self-assess and learn and grow. And the really successful investors I get to serve, they have such radical self-responsibility that they're almost a bit reluctant to tell you too much because they're so used to having to do everything on their own. And so when they finally realize they've got a kindred spirit who actually won't try and take their power, will actually try to empower them and just magnify their existing incredible network, then the walls come right down and, geez, you have some fun. Because they're powerful people and they're jolly interesting.
Oh, I'm sure they are. And if you can crack those fundies who are in REITs and stuff, you're getting somewhere, right? And no doubt they change their tune pretty quickly. So, Margie, how long have you been at Rethink for?
About 2.5 years.
Okay.
Yeah.
And how did you end up being a buyer's advocate?
Well, it's funny. I actually retired off commercial. So I actually bought one. I was a one and done. I had other little commercials that I'd flipped for profit, ski lodge in New Zealand and some American stuff. And then I finally bought local and one, and I just had a good cash flow. So I retired thinking that was the goal. You know, you get enough money to pay your bills. I'm not money motivated. So I went, well, I've got enough to pay all my bills. Now I'll follow all my joys and dreams and fantasies and travel the world and go and see Sham and do all the weird stuff that you think you'll do when money isn't an obstacle. So I went and did all that. And it was really lonely and boring. So I actually made a little video saying, Scotty, and also the other thing, actually, part-time, I was always looking at Real Commercial and, I'll buy that, looks good. So I was constantly looking at deals, fantasizing about bigger deals, thinking, I'd like to get back into doing bigger deals because I was doing property developments prior to that. But the difference between property development and commercial is one is viable, the commercial, and one is really fun and one is average fun. So development seems fun, but it's quite slow and it's very bureaucratic and a lot of GovCo interaction, whereas now I'm only dealing with business owners, professional investors, the 1% in every business, top wage earners, and we get to plan their how much is enough and their exit plan, not to stop work, because retirement, as I say, is silly, but to choose how they spend every hour. So if I could look back over my life, I have a regret, and that is that I didn't find this 20, 30 years ago. I love it so much that it shocks me. Every day I think, how on earth did I get to find myself doing this? So I really thank you, Scotty. Yeah. And I thanked him heaps. You probably think I'm a bit of a weirdo.
I think you had 6 or 7 messages. Like you were going hard on LinkedIn. I'm like, she's full on. She's crazy. But
just trying to get a job.
Yeah.
Oh, was I? Oh.
Yeah, but no, best decision ever. Like she's important. Yeah.
Why
on LinkedIn, you get smashed with like all sorts of scammers and all that kind of stuff. So you kind of have a bit of a lens to go, all right, it's any cold message is a fake one looking to sell you some kind of whatever, YouTube optimization, SEO type stuff. But no, Margie cut through the noise and here we are.
Yeah, well, there you go. If you're going to sort of be good at doing deals, you got to be persistent. You got to be resilient. You got to be relentless. I've got some other questions, but before we go there, you mentioned sort of helping people work out when they choose not to work how much money they need and within sort of the resi landscape. And the number that gets banded and thrown around by everyone is like, it was $100,000, but it's like now it's like $150K in passive income, which is very hard to do in resi property these days. But that's sort of like become the conditional norm of what people aspire to in resi property. The people you're talking to when they're thinking about not working, what's the number? What's their numbers?
If they said $100,000, I can say, great, first purchase, it's done.
Yeah.
It's really easy. They usually are, 500, $1 million. I rarely get someone with a modest starting point because these are people who are on 250, 500 plus. Yeah. That they'll tell me. And then over time, as I get to know them, I find actually there's another pile of cash and more family money. And the longer you get to know them, the more that you realise that they only told you a little tip of the iceberg. Yeah. But you earn the entry into service with that category of person that they've been there, done that. They're protective because exactly what Scott said, you're being hit up the whole time once you're successful. And so you do have to protect yourself. So even when they bring on consultants, advisors, experts like us, they want to test you and you've got to actually earn their trust. And I have no problem with that. I think that's completely fair exchange.
What do you think drives sort of that client base you're talking about there? Like, if they've been successful in business and they know how to make money, okay, great. Like what is it actually gets them out of bed to make them interested?
Such a good question. It's the burning question in every conversation I have with everybody is, what's your why? Why do you do what you do? And what amazes me, Phil, is how few people have actually stopped and asked themselves that question. And so that's probably the most surprising question I ever asked them, which to me is the first question before we start working out a strategy. And they'll say, I haven't ever thought about it. So I go, is it legacy? Is it service? Are you, do you want to contribute? Do you want to feel significant? Do you need validation? We've all got, I think Anthony Robbins talks about the critical human needs: certainty, uncertainty, significance, blah, blah. So we all have those needs, but they do change as your journey unfolds, as you get more life experience, as you age. So it's a constantly moving feast. I think you've got to keep revisiting that. So it's really an act of knowing thyself, and all the best investors really know themselves well. So part of my process as a buyer's agent is actually holding that mirror up to everyone, saying, well, do you like the decisions you're making now? And if not, let's shine light on what's not working for you, and let's come up with a game plan to get it to a point where the outcome's going to completely align with your vision and values for your life. Because I do find a lot of people in chasing money destroy their health. Chasing money, they destroy their family. And then they wake up with all this money, but realize that I wanted the money to have a great family. I wanted to have great health, but instead here I am, wealthy, but everyone's abandoned me. So there's something paradoxical in building wealth. The whole I destroyed my health, destroyed my family. So I'm very conscious of being someone who's there for every investor to say, this is your journey. It's a custom journey. It's not for Margie Baldock to input her values on anybody else, but it is my job to extract that value set, link it to that person's why, and then we can lay a plan that's going to be effective in delivering whatever goal they want. And we can be dogged about it and just stick to the plan. And then interest rates can go up, they can go down, markets can be volatile, crash, whatever. It doesn't matter, because we've typically got a whole of life plan. And unless there's been a change in our full thesis for the client, or there's been a structural change in the market where our thesis no longer pans out, well, then we just stay the course. And one thing I do know is the best investors take less action, which is very ironic. So we've got to take action to be a good investor, but the large-scale research shows women actually outperform men as investors for one reason. Women tend to lack confidence compared to men, so they just do less. So the sheer act of doing less means they make more money because of compounding. So ironically, the lack of confidence historically has shown that women make better investors. I had a client call, just was waiting for the podcast, and he's talking about getting in and out of things. And I was like, really, is that really what we want to do? Yes, you can take a short-term profit, pay taxes and so on. But if we hold that, the compounded wealth we're going to make is just going to so outperform that short-term mentality. So with a lot of very successful men, I often am talking them back from the edge to, why don't we just do a little less? And the women, it's like, come on, you can probably do a little more. So overconfidence and underconfidence, women underconfident, men overconfident, both are actually problematic. So my job is to sort of humble the prideful and boastful, but lovingly, and lovingly bring on the strength in those who undermine themselves.
So that sounds like your role is a lot more than just sourcing property. That's just a very small aspect of it. So buyer's advocate, buyer's agent, property strategist, like, what are you?
Well, I'm again, thanks Scott, because the way Scott structured Rethink, I get to be a specialist. I don't have to find any properties. So all I am really is serving the client. I'm a singular focused creature on the client. The client's why, vision, value, and needs. And I'm there to coach them. I'm there to carry the vulnerability. It should be terrifying. If you're buying commercial property and you're a little bit scared, you're not paying attention. So I kind of want them to tell me that they're feeling scared, and I want that opportunity to help carry that vulnerability, because if the fear's a rational fear, like this is a risk that they're not equipped to take, I want them out. But if it's a fear that they're scared because they don't understand and I can give them more data to help them, then I'm going to probably say, if we walk away from this one, there's no less risky or no better deal.
No, it's a good time to bring up like the structure of Rethink, because it's one of our big competitive advantages that allows Margie to do what she does best. And I've always said we're broken into three main divisions. We've got the due diligence guys. They would not like talking to clients. They're quite very numerical based. Yeah, like very detailed orientated, got the headphones on, just staring at leases and spreadsheets. But they're brilliant at what they do. And they're not associated to commission or anything. They're there to block a bad deal. There's no collusion. They're the safety net for Rethink, and they'll use all the information they have at the time to sign off on the deal. Then you've got the acquisitions people. So they're networking with agents, maybe a specialist in Sunshine Coast, a specialist in Perth, Hobart, whatever it is. And that means they can locally network and they can uncover more off-market deals. Like we're sitting at about 70% off-market, which is the highest in the industry. It's just because they've got the time to talk only to agents. Like if Margie was talking to agents, and this is what other companies do, they do it all in one, or at least acquisitions and sales or buyers agents will do it all in one. And what that means is they're just finding a deal for that client instead of using a network of 20 other people doing the job. So Margie could say, I've got a $5 million client. What's the best deal in Australia for that money? And we'll go out to our network and 4 or 5 deals get sent through. Margie's job is then to pick up the one that suits you for your risk profile. And it just makes all the difference. This is why we do so many deals per month. If you have someone doing it all, number one, you cover about 1/3 of the ground. Like there's an efficiency component to doing one thing good. Yeah, you're just going to basically end up choosing from less deals because you've got that one in your hand and you better send it to your one client instead of having 20 other people search for you. So
can I add to that, Scott? It's a really important point that you can no longer buy, I don't believe, quality commercial without a buyer's agent, because we are sucking all of the deals out of especially the higher value deals that we're just, because there's not a whole lot of buyers and we get first dibs. So I'm finding when we're choosing to take a deal, so acquisitions, and I've got 12 guys and girls, the best in breed, bringing me these deals, what I find is we're often competing with the next smaller buyers agents. And if we don't want it, then it goes to our competitor at a higher price. Then it'll go to the really small guys at an even higher price. And I watch it because I've had the deal and I've looked at it and I've thrown it away because I've deemed there's a risk point perhaps I can't solve, or maybe it's just not suitable for the clients I have at that moment in time. So I'll set it free lovingly, and then I'll see my competitor pick it up, promote it at a higher price, and so on. So then by the time good deals get to by the time there's a good deal, it doesn't get to the open market. So it's on Real Commercial. We've seen it. We've rejected it. So this is why high net worths used to think, I don't need a buyer's agent. I've done this for the last 20, 30 years. I've made a fortune. I'm very successful. All true. Never can take that away from them, and we wouldn't want to. But they're not going to get the deals they were able to get before Rethink came and ruined the market. And I say this proudly, we've ruined the market. It's no longer possible, I don't think, to buy well without a buyer's agent. So now it isn't, should I have a buyer's agent? It's a question of which buyer's agent. And this is where, my clients, I encourage them, interview the buyer's agent, check their bio, check their credentials. How long have they been in property? What background do they have beyond property? So that you really know that they are going to have a holistic point of view. And then really what we bring is access to the deals and access to arguably the best network for everything you're going to need in property. So we just can then magnify the success people are already enjoying.
It reminds me of that. Remember that advert for John West salmon, Chinook salmon, the fish that John West rejects.
Yeah.
So essentially, it's similar.
I borrowed that in a little video.
It's amazing. Exactly like we were just talking before, like deals that we've crashed on due diligence are recycled straight away to
another buyer's agent.
Yeah, and they're like. And we're almost just watching because you see it when it settles and that, like, are they going to pick up what we did? Like this one's got major structural issues, the one we're talking about, or they massively underestimated the outgoings. Some buyer's agents don't even have due diligence teams, so they're just sort of going off the face. Yeah, but they're doing like 1 or 2 a month. So
ouch.
But it's because it's such a small world. Like remember the stat? Was it 7,754 deals last year?
Is that not many? Is there?
No, that's a lot of them are $100 million towers to development sites too. So, that 1 to 30 mil price point, there's really not many out there. So when Margie says we've seen all the deals online, we've seen there's probably 6 or 7 in our team that have all internally fought over that's my deal because I spoke to that agent last, and it's like internal politics, who gets it. So that's one of the management things I have to deal with. Those two are fighting over. And I just say to them, sort it out between yourselves. Yeah. Split the comms if you need to. I don't care. Like you're all grown-ups. You can find out. Down? They're grown-ups. They sort it. Well. Yeah, they sort it out.
It's very entrepreneurial.
The Christmas party.
Yeah, you took my deal. That's my agent.
It's water off a duck's back. It's water off a duck's back. We're actually a really good team, I think, and we quite tough on each other, and yet we just kiss and make up. But look, when the team bring me a write-up, Phil, which is the format we use to communicate to clients, so everything's standardized. I already know, because we've done this. The market is so small and we've done so many deals as a company. Myself as a B, I've done so many deals now that I already know, is the square metre rate of the build spot on? Is the lease, is it 20% under, 30% under? And they're the first things I look for. Then I'll check, the flood, the this, the that, all the usual suspects. So before I take it to a client, I've kind of already de-risked it substantively. They won't even get in front of a client if it doesn't pass pretty rigorous checks as an investor. But what I can't tell them is that particular asset, if that particular asset's a lemon or lemonade, I won't know at that point, but I'll know the area, I'll know the asset type, I'll know the cap rate, I'll know the rent, I'll know the tenant type. So there's a heck of a lot I will know. Now, when you're out on your own making an investment decision, you don't have all that data. You don't know if the cap rate you're being asked to pay by a seller is a fantasy to their benefit, or if it's a bargain for yours. You just don't have that. I have that. As a result of that, my clients can be super fast and decisive. If I say, if this is true, do you want the asset? Then all due diligence is proving it's true, because we trust no one. I have to see a piece of paper to prove everything I've been told by an agent before I will say to a client, yes, we now know what the risks are. But my secondary job in due diligence is actually to find where all the bodies are buried. So sellers are selling either because they need the money, or maybe there's something wrong with the property. And so I have to assume it's the latter and go and try and find everything and tear that thing apart, because really, I can't have the risk of my client buying a lemon, like that one that our competitor's now selling, which has structural issues. I found that, we're out. But secondly, if I find problems that I can solve, and that's my superpower, as an ex-developer, I know how to solve quite complex property problems fairly easily. And if I
That's
can,
where a lot of the value lies.
there's a value.
Problems.
So now I'm saying to a client, don't get up scared if there's a problem, get excited. You've just now weaponized a lethal weapon. I am intimidating and terrifying. And clients will often say,
are you intimidating and terrifying?
well, according to feedback I get. So they'll say to me, Phil, I'm glad you're negotiating on my part. I'm not negotiating against you, is a common risk.
What's your negotiating style?
It changes depending on who I'm against. Like a poker game, I'm assessing every opposition uniquely. But I can't tell you too much here, because then sellers will work out some of my game plans. But everything I do is utterly strategic. I will say that from the way I'll get a contract signed to the way I'll conduct due diligence. What I'm trying to do is, when I turn up with all my demands at unconditional time, I want a yes. Now, if I've been an absolute jackass to a seller, even if they would give them to someone because they don't like me, it's going to be a no. So I'm very conscious of, I'm there to be firm and fair and get a really good outcome. But what the sellers have to realize is I'm probably solving their problem. They probably have a property that is not saleable.
So essentially you're solving a lot of the problems that people don't know are problems.
Correct.
Whether it's the seller or the actual client you're representing.
Yes.
Maybe give one of the examples of, because Margie's really good at problem solving. So as we know with commercial, there's a million variables and problems come up in due diligence. And you were telling me one about a month ago.
So many. Which one, boss?
Pick your favorite. Like the main message is you've got to have resilience through the deal.
Absolutely.
Like it's not about just throwing in the towel, because if you can negotiate with the weaknesses of the deal, you can have a win with it.
Correct.
So that one
that has the so-called structural problems, if I could have got a massive price discount, because I had a path to get that fixed, but to take on the risk, so everything's risk reward, and I just want to price a risk. If I can price a risk and then pay a price under the cost of that risk, I've made a profit for the client. So I'm not scared of risk, but I'm scared of risk I can't price, and I'm scared of risk I can't control it getting fixed. So they're the only times I will just walk on a deal. Every now and then a client might walk because they realize, I thought the risk was this and it's actually more than I understood. That happens once a year. Not a common thing, but it does happen. And I'm actually grateful, ironically, when that happens, because I'd rather know now that the client doesn't have the kahunas for what was being proposed than find out after they've settled.
It's an actual industry term, is it?
But so long and the short is risk reward. That's what we're in the business of. And then on top of that, there's good luck, bad luck. Sometimes clients just jag a deal where there's just an absurd amount of free money, and it's a bit of luck. You know,
luck everywhere.
But actually, look, one really good negotiated one. We found this shed a bit over a month ago. I've just done a little video on it, and we were able to pick it up at least 30% below rent. But when we got under the bonnet with the lease, it actually had this odd clause I've never seen before that said 20% of the rent would be set aside for maintenance if needed. So I went to the seller and said, we got a problem. I can't finance this now. It's your problem. But here's my solution to you. You're going to pay out the cash of that exact quantum for the entire lease at settlement. So that means I can show to the bank the full quantum of the lease. And then we did a deal with the tenant such that we were able to cap of that 300 grand paid out. Only 80 grand would actually ever have to go to repairs because nothing more was needed. So essentially we really got this huge chunk of free money, and it was also 30% under rented. So there was about 1.2 million profit on a $4.1 million purchase, and the client got basically 220 grand cash back and 80 grand towards making it ultra modern and funky.
Yeah, so with commercial property, there's a lot more play in how you can frame.
Yeah, it's all a lease manipulation and finance game. Now, my background, I've got a finance accounting degree, was a mortgage broker 1,000 years ago when I was property developing. And so I've just always been in development, finance, financial planning, something where you're doing this stuff. You're manipulating a lease, you're working out a clever finance strategy. So it's just how my brain works, and I really enjoy it. So if I can say to a client, can you see where this free money is, 30% that we can mine in 18 months, I am honestly deliriously happy.
How do you know you've done a good job?
It's all in the eye of the client. I live for the client's love. Isn't that sad? I just realized I have my religion, my philosophy is love. But
you can do it mechanically and go, it's 30% under, blah, blah, blah.
No.
But they're facts. Like
it's celebrating the win with the client. Yeah. So for example, my first client is now really good mate. And when I'm in Sydney, I stay at her house. And I have a lot of friendships that have arrived from this. So I have homes literally across the country. Whenever you're in ACT, you must stay at my house. So I end up having these deep friendships. I'd say with 80% of my clients, 20%, it's just transactional. I admit that. I still love them the same, but I have to. Why I absolutely love this, I thoroughly enjoy the deals. Like I could look at them nonstop all day long and be happy. But on top of that, I then punctuate that with talking to 1%ers about amazing experiences. They'll be skiing and they'll stop skiing, ski back into their lodge, do the DD call with me then, or they'll do due diligence with me.
Sounds awfully glamorous.
It is. And then they'll be jumping on a plane coming home from Shanghai, but they'll stop off inconveniently to do due diligence with me. So they're traveling the world all over the shop. I've had to ground myself because I've made myself too busy, and I will not. I took 1 week holiday and the client lost money, so no holidays for me. Nope.
There you go. So, but sort of
temporarily,
you paint a picture of what your client base is, and no doubt there'll be a spectrum of it. But how do you sort of understand their goals? How do you work out what they want? Because a lot of, call them high net worth individuals, have a sort of a veneer of that's hard to break into, right? So
it is. That's the hardest
gaining
part.
trust is core and key. But at the end of the day, your job is to help them make
so with
more
them,
money,
I literally say, let me show you. I'm not going to tell them anything they don't know. That would be telling them to suck eggs. So I just say, let me show you the deals I have just done for someone who is presented with a similar brief to you. And what happens is all the walls fall down because they see the caliber of deal and go, oh, you actually can deliver. Okay. And then they'll tell me a bit more. And I'll go, okay, based upon that updated intel, here's the deal I've just done. And the walls fall. And after I've shown them 3 or 4, the trust is there simply because they go, okay, you genuinely can deliver what you are saying. So I've always demonstrate. I won't tell, I will demonstrate.
And how do you ever sort of truly challenge your clients and stop them in their tracks where they, well, what sort of questions or like interrogation, I imagine sometimes with you, do you sort of get to a point where you just go, oh.
Yeah, I have declined to take on clients, again, with love, saying, with respect, we'd have to travel back to the 1980s to fulfill your brief. And I don't delve in disappointment. So if I'm going to disappoint you because your expectations are so out of line with reality, I'll give them a couple of chances to try and bring them back to reality and say, may I show you the modern era? And again, with respect and kindness, and I'll show them. And if they go, oh no, that's not, and I'll show them the best of the best. And if it's still absolutely beneath them, it's not good enough, I will just say, I tell you what, off you go. And if that doesn't work out for you, my door is always open.
So the role of the buyer's agent then, and maybe a question for you, Scott, is it to turn goals into strategy for investors and own that strategy versus, I would like to think the strategy's got to be owned by
one of our biggest jobs is just to protect the strategy. So they come to us and want cash flow, and all of a sudden they're wanting development upside or focusing too much on whatever sort of niche. But we want to keep them level-headed. Like we know our strategy the best because we know it's the current market valuations for things. We know where the markets are going per asset class. So we're always talking to people, don't look at that asset class, look at this one, and just talking them out of selling all the time. I do that 3-4 times a week. Yeah, like because their assets have gone up so much. And I had this guy, he's like bought a $4 million industrial property off me 3-4 years ago, and it's worth $8 million. It's doubled. And he's like, oh, I want to sell it. I'm like, no, just refinance it because that thing's still going to go. Like that was a Brisbane property.
Why do you want to sell it? To reinvest or just to
go
spend
big?
It? Okay.
This is the common one. Everyone wants to go larger. The whole analogy you had at the start, you get excited going larger and larger. That's the addiction part, because you could end up owning a Stockland shopping centre for 200 million if you keep going. But yeah, the strategy there is just don't do anything, because you're going to pay all this capital gains tax. You're going to lose an asset that you'd happily buy today yourself if you started again. Yeah, just protecting the strategy. And, even when they've got dud residential properties and all that, like sometimes just refinancing's the best option. But, if the market's turning, our job would be to tell people to slow up as well, and like, I don't think 2026 is that market. It's just looking too strong versus the demand versus the supply side of things as well. So just being level-headed, like Margie mentioned, sometimes less is more in this strategy. And yeah, we just want to make sure they're going to have a good 5 years ahead. And sometimes if you run into a vacancy, this is the common one for novice investors, is to go, oh, it's a dud investment. Yeah. I don't know what to do. It's a dud. I'm going to sell it. It's only a dud until you find another tenant. And it could be, unfortunately, 2 years before you find it, because you might have to do some renovations, or maybe the business climate isn't the best for that asset class. But eventually you'll find a new tenant, your valuation's straight back up where you want it. If you're going to sell, that's the time to sell, but you probably wouldn't because you got a nice long lease and the price is maximized. That's the scary bit with commercial. And that's what we're always advocating on this podcast. Like, it does go wrong sometimes, and that's just tenant related. It's got nothing to do with the deal sometimes. It's purely someone's business didn't work, or, I had that vacancy with an IGA, like divorce. They decided not to open the door one day and all the fridges had everything rotting inside it, like lost 150 grand of stock, but didn't mean the deal was a dud. Like, Foodworks took over it, and that deal is 5-6 years later one of my best. So yeah.
So getting past that short-term thinking, isn't it, Scott?
Yeah.
So the term of the investment's hopefully your life. If we buy well, keep it forever, because you get compounding, but you are going to have periods of vacancy throughout it. The key is to reframe what vacancy means. So I think there's such this stigma of, oh, you get vacancy commercial? Yeah, you may. Yeah. But I've seen plenty of examples where the cost of the vacancy, I've bought the deal because it's got vacancy, little example, because this is where vacancy becomes your friend and it's profitable. So I've bought a deal because it's got 10 months on a lease. So that's no good for an owner occupier. And you can't get a lease stock loan, it's too short. So what I've done in that scenario is found a client who can afford let's say 100 grand out of pocket at the end of a 10-month lease. So if you can afford to wear that cost of vacancy, we've priced it all up. On the other side of it, let's say the tenant currently is paying $80 a square metre, but it should be 130. On the other side of that 100 grand, there's going to be probably about 1.2 million equity. So yes, you're going to spend a cold hard 100 grand, but we're going to 10x that on the other side of that vacancy. Now that particular example is a true deal. I will do a video on it. And we actually got that renewed lease with the same tenant in due diligence. So we made him 1.2 million without spending the 100 grand. So I actually turn the vacancy on its head and say, I'm hunting for short leases where it's soon going to be vacant, because I know how to turn that into make the seller pay the cost of getting it re-tenanted, and now my client gets the upside, which can be 10x the cost of the vacancy. So if you really zoom out and look at vacancy, commonly it's a profitable thing to go through. So it's not fun. It's no fun, of course. 2 or 3 months without a tenant, you're not sleeping well, all those things. But on the other side of it typically will be profitable. Not always, but typically.
Well, you've got the risk factored in. It's worthwhile. One of the great things about this podcast is that we've really democratized commercial investing and probably accelerated a lot of people's pivot to it a lot earlier in their investing career. And all those people you spoke about were probably frustrated that, this used to be
we've ruined everything.
It's such a best kept secret before
Scotty ruined
before it
everything.
sort of got industrialized. So, it's easy to get carried away with what's realistic and what's unrealistic, and you need to go on social media and there's everyone telling you how
and
great
so
and
social media,
it is.
Phil, you make a great point, because it's always so positive. So people come to me having seen social media, and that's when I think, I love Scott, but not so much right this second, because it always gives you the high yield, the this, the that. So they go, I want that one that was on social, which is usually mine often. And I go, okay, but did you know this part of the deal, that part? And they go, oh, okay, well now I don't want it. So it's actually my job not just to show the yield, the upside, but what also could go wrong. Let's price it. Can you afford that? Now, if you can afford it, let's go for it. If you can't afford the downside, I certainly won't encourage them to do it. I've had a few clients where they wanted to do that anyway, and I've gone, well, I'm out. So it's totally on your head. I've had clients make me do cash offers, which I don't want to do that. That's just so risky. But again, it's the client. The client's the boss. I'll do as I'm told. It's only my job to point out things that could go wrong and the price of things going wrong. But it is not for me to be their mummy, to be their conscience. It is absolutely for me to be someone who will mirror to them when they are self-sabotaging, when they are being overconfident, when they are being underconfident, and to just bring them gosh dang great deals that'll melt their face.
Well, that's what it comes down to. Do you think most people are realistic? Most investors are realistic these days in relation to what deals look like?
Not remotely, completely. So my first job when someone appoints me is to work out if they understand the market. The high net worths who are active typically know the market, so that's dead easy. That piece is fast. But what I do, I just immerse them in their budget. I show them everything. So I say, look, let me just show you everything I've done in your budget with your rough brief in the last 8 weeks. And the reason, some you'll love, some you'll hate. But what I've learnt is the deal's in the eye of the beholder. So just like beauty. So a deal I might bring to you, you might think it's just gosh awful. And Scott might go, there's so much money in that. And you two could duke it out. And I'd actually probably agree with both of your points. You probably would both be correct. So what it actually is the most important part's the investor, what they are willing to assume as the risk, because you're time poor, Phil. So if I brought you some of the deals which have really high upside, they might need some actual TLC that's just, you just don't have the time for it. More than competent, but may not have the time. So someone like you, I'd probably bring you a under rented deal where you don't have to do anything except just wait a year. Wait 2 years, market review comes in, leasing agent or property manager takes care of it. That's the kind of deal I'd do for someone who's time poor.
Do you think being conservative in this market is an advantage or a disadvantage?
So again, such a good question. It's so customized. As a default position, conservative is always smart. However, that's such a relative term again. So if you're a young person, you haven't got kids, you've got a good job, and you are really ambitious and you want to have that time freedom that we all seek. To get that done, you want to leverage up and take as much risk as you can because you've got plenty of time to recover. But as you get older and you've got more commitments and so on, you probably want to pare back the risk. So I think it is both lifestyle, age, and general, what do you want out of life? We're all so unique. But as a rule of thumb, conservatism pays, yes.
Yeah. And sort of conservatism, Scott, probably has a good bedfellow in realism, and it's your job really to break down expectations with people. Do you get frustrated? Sort of, you get a client on the phone, you just go, "This person's a joke. I don't want anything to do with it."
Oh yeah, like
you must cut them off straight away.
There's 10%, like Margie mentioned.
He's patient. He's very patient.
It's just like bringing them down to the current market. But like, this is why we use this podcast to kind of, I always sort of say there's a band of width where you want to be in. Like right now, it could be between 5.5 net and 6.5. That's where a good quality deal with good capital growth, that's got a strong tenant, capital city, major regional, you're going to kind of have it all in one. There's this big movement of people going below 5% because they kind of get trapped into the whole, it's such good quality, I can overpay. If you start buying into the sub, unless it's got to be upside. If you're in that range, then that's where being too conservative is just going to do you out of a profit, and you're just going to underperform the market. It's like buying an ASX blended fund that performs 2% less per year for no other reason. Like, you've got the option to get better. That frustrates even like people like Margie, because we're setting the bar pretty high for our business. We don't want to be chasing everything because it does create that barrier to entry we often talk about, where we need clients who want a certain level of yield, because if you want crappy yields, just, go on the line and go bid at an auction.
There's only so many good deals out there.
That's right.
So you just need to make sure you can control those. You find those deals and control those deals.
So one of my big jobs managing the company is working out where the gaps in the market are. So I know we're extremely well represented, too much to the fact, in Southeast Queensland. We've got 6 or 7 eyes on all the deals there. New South Wales, we're bulking up. Tassie, Victoria, we're well represented there. Because I saw the Victorian market turning 3 years ago. So we hired about 2 years ago now. We've got the best of the best down there. We've got an industrial specialist, a retail specialist, someone who's into large format retail, Tassie specialist. So we've got that market covered, and there's no other buyers agents based down there. South Australia, it's just a quiet market, not much transactions. The yields can be a bit lower. So we use some of our firepower out of Southeast Queensland to look into that market, and our head office in Sydney. Well represented in Perth. Darwin, there's not enough going on to justify a full-time role there. Obviously, we've got New Zealand, which we're well covered there as well. So I know where the next pockets are, and I won't say it out loud, but we're hiring to fill those, because there's opportunities.
Tell me offline.
Yeah, I can. But basically how I work it out is the yields get to a certain point and the value becomes there. So once the value is there, we're going to start buying before the market. So when there's yield expansion, that's almost like buying in the dip. So that's classic New Zealand. Like the yield has expanded from 5% to 7% in areas. So 40% difference. That's great.
No capital gains tax either.
Yeah, and that's looking even better at the moment. And then you got no stamp duty as well. So yeah, we don't see many New Zealanders buying in Australia for that reason. A lot of Aussies are now going there for a diversity play, but yeah, the situation there's so good.
It's crazy. So you must have not always got it right, Margie. Sort of what mistakes have you made personally that sort of changes the way that you advise people today?
Yeah. Okay, well the big one, Phil, is selling. So many properties I have sold, and I didn't have to sell them, but I sold them. That cash would be lovely. And I just look back and go, you silly girl. Should have kept everything. So now I'm very reluctant when people say, should I sell my resi to come into commercial? Just as a duty of care, I say, well, why? Why are you doing that? So I really try and encourage people to keep what they have, because getting back in is hard and they've worked hard to get there. So instead I'd rather build on what they have. And commonly you can refi equity out almost the same amount and add commercial with that. But again, so many still wish to sell because they're sick of the negative gearing. That's the dream of I'll be free off these properties didn't eventuate. They're getting close to retirement. They can't, with serviceability and the discrimination against, certain age groups in resi, they can't refi out. The dream was you would live off the debt of the equity in retirement. That can't really happen in reality. So they want to sell to get just the cash flow of commercial. And the big benefit of commercial, if we do buy well, typically you put down your deposit, get on with life, and year 12 to 15, it's paid off itself. And now that cash flow is genuinely yours to truly live off. And it's usually a substantial amount of money.
It's a really important point. What sort of bias is there from lenders in relation to commercial property with age? Because, if you get sort of the back end of your 50s and 60s, the resi lenders start getting a bit jittery.
This is the big problem. Like the people that need to hear this will probably never listen to this podcast. Like, so there's a massive industry out there telling you to buy, the 20, 30 houses. And generally they're younger people. Like it's almost like collecting toys, the analogy we often use. But like Margie mentioned, you're going to build this portfolio full of debt. It's just a pile of debt. And it's got these, 10, 15 houses that aren't really performing. And then you're going to reach a point where you want to retire, but you can't because your job is there to support the loan. So it becomes a lending risk, especially if they tinker with the lending rules, which they are now. And it's going to get worse, I think. Every time the interest rate goes, your lending capacity drops each time it rises. So the people that need to hear this, unfortunately won't, because everyone listening to this podcast gets it. But we want people to start building a portfolio that works. We need to replace incomes. That means you've got to start looking at assets. It's not just one commercial, it might be 3 or 4. So if you do have a vacancy, it's only 25% of your income gone for 3 to 6 months, whatever it is. But that's an effective portfolio. And if we sort of got to the message to more people and that we're saving them for something they don't even need. They don't even know they need saving from it.
Yeah.
It's becoming a really big problem with this industry where I'm seeing people like buy half of Darwin up or half of Perth in like average markets. And it's all going well when the market's moving in a direction, but it will cool at the same time. And that's when you're going to be in this big, mountain of debt with poor cash flow. The retirement dreams everyone promises, how often do you hear them actually retire? They're not. Very few of them have ever retired. Commercial, we're dealing with hundreds. Most of our guys and girls have already retired because they've got the money and it's producing 3, 4, 500 grand.
Give us 7 years, less if you've got plenty of resources. 10 if you're starting with less. But to your point on loans, we don't have the national credit code in commercial, meaning the banks don't have to get into your knickers drawer and prove you can afford the loan. If you stump up with a deposit, you can have the rest of the money. So I joke you can be 90 and toothless and homeless and still get a commercial asset, but for resi, you can't. You've got to be 25 with a big job. And so it is quite discriminatory to protect people in resi, but the freedom we get in commercial is lovely. So as a developer, I could get, 10, 20, $30 million loans with zero serviceability proof required. So commercial has that luxury where you don't have serviceability issues and restrictions on the borrower's age and things like that.
Yeah, and there's two main ways we see them buying. It's obviously the lease stock loan. So they might have $500,000 and you lend the rest based on the lend on the strength of the property itself, the lease. And funds, you could literally just go in and put $300,000-400,000 or $500,000 into a fund and get a 6, 7, 8% return. That's very popular with your plus 50-year-olds. Super purchases are very popular with that. So you can really avoid debt if you want to, or take a modest 50% debt on a lease stock loan or whatever it is at the moment. So yeah, it's not the same level of debt. Basically, that makes it work, which is a nice thing, especially as you're planning for retirement.
And this all comes down to how well you buy, right? Because the absolute de-risking setting is that you got to sell the asset in order to solve whatever problem that you have. So if you're buying data assets that you can't sell, that's not a good thing.
But holding forever, we get compounding, the eighth wonder of the world, Phil.
Yeah, so they say.
Yeah.
So they say.
And that's back to mistakes. So selling, because that destroys compounding. I've also had builders go bust on me. Lost $1 million just on that. But how I survived that, interestingly, taught me a massive lesson. So here's why I think we shouldn't be scared of making mistakes as investors and getting things wrong, because property is so forgiving. You can still end up retired even when you make dodgy mistakes like me. So what I did, 2 builders go bust. The second one, I teamed up with the top bank, head office of the bank. I told them what was happening. They teamed up with me to make the builder think if they finished my 30 houses that they would continue lending to them. And as a result, they did finish. They went broke on 15 other developers and folded, but mine got completed. And that's because I teamed up with the bank and we played good cop, bad cop. So I learned the banks are your friends. In tough times, you don't worry about them foreclosing. You just turn up and tell them your game plan and they'll back you.
Are all BAs created this way?
They're all different. That's the good thing.
We are.
Yeah, completely different personalities. And that's the beauty of having all these different personalities in the business, because like clients, some are completely crazy and some are just so grounded you can't even wake them up. And there's someone for everyone in this business.
And I think we're good at matching, because when you call up, you actually say, this is the kind of support I feel I need. Yeah. And I do think we're quite good at that matching piece.
Well, we're 3/4 of people that reach out sign up with us. So extremely high rate. And that's maybe matching. It's positioning in the market, a bit of everything, but matching with the right person, because you're building it, hopefully a life partner. So if you sign up with a senior buyer's agent, hopefully they can build the entire portfolio. That's been one of the best parts of me being in this industry. I've worked with people that for 10 years, one of them has 17 properties, 3/4 of them are commercial. Started buying in 2016 and now they're on to $20 million warehouses, and they started buying little $500,000 houses in Ipswich, or not even Ipswich. It was north side of Brizzy, and now they're buying $20 million sheds. It's crazy.
That's the exciting part, Phil. So that when your client comes back one a year, and then once one every 6 months, and then basically now I've got so many clients, you settle, and then it's what are we buying next?
Yep.
And it's that privilege to be part of their whole life experience that to me is so beautiful.
How much money do you need to be meaningful to stump up enough equity or cash flow in commercial property to choose not to work? Everyone's number's different.
It's a good question.
But really, what do you need to get going?
So you have that. It's funny you ask that question, because that's the one question I ask everyone, and almost none of them know the answer to that, which always surprises me, because I would have thought, well, if you are investing, aren't you investing because you have a cash flow number? And I actually will say, do you mind go and have a think about it, have a chat with your other loved one, because once I know that number, I can reverse engineer instantly how much commercial asset we would need to hold. If they've got existing, we can remove that so that we can put it to a meaningful amount. And then that tells us how many specific assets of certain price points we're going to need to buy. And then we can decide what time frame we have the resource to do it. Can we get it done in 1 and we're done? Are we going to need 3 and we need 5 years? So we can actually literally map out the complete game plan. And that still will modify and change as time goes. If we have a bigger bit of luck and some mining of equities better than we thought, great, we go a little faster. And conversely, it might go a little slower if something slightly adverse happened. So we still nip and tuck it as we go, but pretty much it's between 1 and 3 assets over the next 1 to 5 to 7 years. Pretty simple, but I do need that starting income. So that's the part I can't tell you. Now, if you give me a number that your resources simply don't support that, I can still get you there. But the difference is the type of deals I will show you to get that are probably going to be what I would say there for really experienced people. So you always have that dichotomy of the person who doesn't have as much experience wants the bigger risk, and you have to probably pull them back and go, let's go a little slower to go faster. And then the super experienced people already come with that inherent conservatism or deep self-knowledge, so they can brief you with complete precision. They know their metrics. So when I bring them a deal, they know it's a good deal. So I can see they're like, okay, you know your stuff. And that's that moment where we go, okay, well, now that I've proven I can match you, we can actually have some fun. Let's get dirty together and tear it apart. And then we'll brainstorm negotiating plans. If I can get you this, Phil, how does that work? And we'll, work out what we need from the seller to make an average deal sensational for you.
There you go. Well, lots there. Thanks for coming down. Have a chat with us.
It's a privilege to get to meet you.
Yeah, it's
nice.
Yeah,
like you're a celebrity.
How long are you in town for?
I'm flying back this afternoon.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah. International Women's Day, catch up with all the girls in the office.
Yeah.
Celebrate how good women are at investing.
Today, isn't it?
Courage. I think it's the 8th of March,
8th of
but
March,
we're doing all the promo today for that, which is amazing. Because any chance to see the beautiful girls of Rethink. I was just saying to Scotty, he only hires very attractive humans, and the girls, they're very attractive.
Yeah, he works with very attractive humans.
Yeah.
That's the way it
So
works.
we all get together and have a lot of laughs, and it's a privilege. So I want to really thank Scotty for what he's done for those, just commercial property. I feel you've made it something that is accessible to everybody, and to break through and give that training you have done over the last, decade is, you've changed so many lives, and I'm a beneficiary of that. And I wish you did it like 30 years ago, mate.
I know.
It's my
and
only
the amount of
complaint.
lives you're changing now in the last 2.5 years.
It's a privilege.
Huge numbers.
Yeah.
So, it's a great little
We're a good
relationship.
Team.
It's good.
It's a good team. To the moon from here, though, Scotty. We're only just getting started, aren't we?
Well, I might give you a sense for what buyers agents, buyers advocates actually do outside of just finding properties. So, Scott, what's the best way for people to track you guys down?
Just Google Rethink, Rethink Group, Rethink Investing. As you know, we've got the whole suite of companies. I'll even mention like Rethink Wealth, because if we just had a meeting prior to this, that's Pat Casey, booked 3 months in a row. So like that service is extremely popular. Interestingly, he's pushing a few more people back to residential because commercial doesn't work for everyone, especially as the minimum budget is getting higher and higher. The number is getting high because there's simply not that many good deals. I guess the cheaper it is, the more risk it is. So just remember that. If you're an entry-level commercial investor, sometimes residential is better for you. So
entry level now is 1 to 2, right?
Really? It's probably under 2, 1.5. Yeah, it's getting up there. So anyone push, you bought a 500 grand property this morning. They're out there, but they're just few and far between. And like if we mentioned, we can get you 500 grand deals online, 300 people will reach out in the next week, and there might be one deal
and we just disappoint people, and we don't want to disappoint people. We'd love to give it to them, but if it's not there, then they're just going to think, we've signed them up and got them excited and can't deliver.
So the point with like Rethink Wealth, they'll set a plan. They might say, look, you got to do 1 or 2 resis first, sit on the growth for 2 years, save a bit of money on the side, then go for a $2 million property in 2028. But there's a real plan and there's a cash flow breakdown, and then they work out in 20 years you're going to have X amount of passive income, and that's a financial planner. Like we're not buyers agents, we're not licensed to give financial advice. They are. So if you need sometimes just to sit back and plan long term, that's a really good business to reach out to. So you'll see that in Rethink Group. There's many others like the financing and that. But all guns blazing. 2026 is looking strong. We did our big wrap of the market last podcast, which
that's very good.
Which is going into each asset class. So I think it's going to be a good year.
Wasn't bad at all.
Oh, maybe that's one I haven't heard yet. The one before.
Yeah.
Oh, got to can't keep up with you two.
I know, it's tough. It's what we do on Inside Commercial Property. I hope you enjoyed that, everyone. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you next time. Until then, bye-bye.